What were the two quotes, Jerry? Meaning of meaning? Was he another book?
Okay, I want to make a new sign, Bob. And we could discuss silence in the sign.
That's
hot and cold.
Oh.
Why? That's what my questions, that's what my dialogue's about.
What was I telling you about? Figure ground.
No, well, that's part of it, but it's in this one.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the question was, will there ever be silence?
Yeah, well, here,
Yeah.
you read that, then I'll read this, and then we'll dialogue.
Bob asked Jerry, will there ever be silence?
Krishnamurti asked that first.
Yeah. Well, no. Bob asked Jerry, will there ever be silence? Jerry answered, Bob, objects are unobservable. Only relationships among objects are observable. And then I said, well, Jerry, are you disturbed by the sometimes harsh critical responses your work at work gets? And Jerry says, even Hercules had to clean the Augean stables but once.
Aw, that's McLuhan.
Okay, Jerry.
Metaphors.
Objects are unobservable. Only relationships among objects are
What's the first part about
observable.
silence?
What?
Didn't you read the part about silence?
Yeah, the question is, will there ever be silence? Marshall was asked, will there ever be silence? And Marshall said, objects are unobservable. In other words, silence as a quality is unobservable. Only relationships among objects are observable.
Silence as a what?
As a goal, as an object, an object.
Unobservable.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I'll read you this quote and see if you can apply this shit into that shit.
What's with the bright light, Jerry?
It's better. It's very nice. Okay. This gentleman was asked, do you feel that this inner world is the source of music and songs? And this guy said, yeah. People are flowers, music is water, and the musician is the hose. When you look at how... Hose! Garden hose. When you look at how Beethoven heard da-da-da-dum, it wasn't from the radio. There was an inner radio that is happening all the time. Excuse me, there is an inner radio that is happening all the time. And the dial to turn it on is that you have to shut up. You have to shut your mind, you have to shut your mouth and just listen. I don't know if you've ever been to a place where it's so silent that it's loud. The silence is loud. You want me to keep going?
Yeah.
Since I've learned to meditate, sometimes out of meditation you get the songs and you go, oh, now I see where Train was getting this stuff or where Jimi Hendrix was coming from. Because silence is like a radio itself, and the way you tune in is to make yourself more silent, and then you hear the songs louder. But you have to still your mind. To get the real music that is going to last the longest, you have to be very quiet and be very gentle with how you write them down.
Right. Well, that guy is certainly deceived.
Well, what about, why is he deceived? He says there is an inner radio that is happening all the time.
There's only...
Is he just hearing the electric environment?
Right. And he's biased toward the old art form of radio. The music is always comes out of the language that people use, and the language today is mixed corporate media. So music doesn't come from just the inside; it basically comes from outside. It's translated through
both.
Yeah, you can say there's a user who has his own interpretation of the effects of translating language into music. Right?
That's music to my ears, Bob. If Garrett could hear you now. That's
what we gotta do, Jerry. We gotta phone Christine, Wayne, Garrett, and Stang. We'll have fun doing that tonight.
Have a hack fest.
Yeah, let's call Christine. Anyways, the guy's emphasizing the inner too much.
Yeah.
He's actually listening to his brain sort of central nervous system. He's listening to the rhythms evoked by the external environment, which he would call an inner radio. But it's not radio. It's television and computers that makes the music today.
Inner and outer? Or he's just making this metaphor?
He's emphasizing the inner too much. It's always a figure ground interplay. Like he's favoring a certain kind of music, Hendrix and Coltrane. Whatever he thinks that stuff is, he feels he gets it by withdrawing. But probably he's evoking inner radio. Radio is an art form in the 50s and 60s, so Coltrane and Hendrix were part of the 60s, so he's nostalgically evoking the old music created by the television environment when radio was an art form in the 50s and 60s, like that chart over there, right? So he's tuning into the past music. The new music is just turn on the radio. You hear the new music. It's rap, eh?
But he says when he meditates, when he closes, when he shuts out, he's trying to say that he has to shut out the environment in order to hear things.
Yeah, but he's hearing the past because he's not hearing the programming that's going on now in him.
So he's trying to suppress that, but
by withdrawing.
But in the suppression of it, is he creating something new?
He's retrieving an old cliche, which can be new. You can create a new cliche out of it.
But is his silence the same silence that McLuhan's talking about?
He's right about saying silence becomes loud because he's realizing that there is no silence. As you go closer to what he thought is silent, it becomes loud. So there is no silence. You know, it's neither. It's unclassifiable. It's a relationship between noise and quality sounds.
Well, when people try to meditate, they're trying to reach silence. So are you saying that in the electric environment, maybe they're not going to be able to get to a silence?
I was distracted there. Say that again? What?
He's talking about meditation, so I'd like to skip to meditation itself.
Just repeat the question exactly.
Yeah. If people are meditating and trying to get to a silence, are you saying that that's impossible to get to in the electric environment?
It's always been impossible to get to because silence is unobservable. There's no such place.
So what are all these gurus telling people then?
Good question. Well, they're deluded. They are in War and Peace in the Global Village. Marshall talks about this. The Herman Hesse books that the kids were into in the 60s were an attempt to turn off the inputs. I just get the quote there.
So they thought that they were shutting things out, and in order to stop them, then they thought that they were going to get to a silence because they would stop them.
Yeah, they thought there was a goal to shutting things down. But here's the standard. He writes about that exactly in this book. But here it is. Look, he quotes Herman Hesse. Okay, he shows the kids meditating, right, or trying to tune in. The turned-on effect, which penetrates the television generation, 15 years and under, inspires them to read books like Siddhartha by Herman Hesse. Hesse was a favorite of intellectuals in the 1920s and plays a considerable role in The Wasteland by Eliot. Siddhartha is a story of violence as a quest for identity. So the gurus are trying to deal with the kids' quest for identity.
Siddhartha is in Hollywood movie form now, coming out.
Well, it was made a movie in the 70s.
Yeah, it's like every 20 years they're going to recycle.
Oh, they're going to do it a new one, eh?
Yeah.
The story concerns the odyssey of the gifted son of a wealthy Brahmin who leaves home to become a samana. Asceticism or self-denial is as much a form of violence. So the gurus advocate a particular form of violence, a way of discovering one's own inner boundaries and territorialities. So it's as much a form of violence as war or education. Then he goes through...
Is it a personal violence or a violence to outward violence as well?
Well, since you don't exist, you're a relationship that affects other people, so it's a violence, right?
Right.
Every action is violent. And so he talks about Siddhartha going through these phases, and he says, expressed in terms of our Western environment today, the Siddhartha strategy, where he became a guru, an ascetic, withdrew, would consist, so in terms of our Western environment, it would consist in creating an environment untouched by any technology whatever, so that there would be no inputs for the sensorium, and hence no processing of any inputs such as constitutes experience or sensory closure.
What sensory closure?
That's processing sensory inputs. Our closure is our cultural bias that we mutate the sensory input from. It's like user as content. Literate man easily imagines that there is a direct correspondence between the input and the experience. He lives in a world of correspondences and matchings and repetitions, which he calls rationality and science. Until fairly recently, any setup was scientific if it could be exactly reproduced or repeated. This, of course, can never happen in any moment of human experience. Every input is totally transformed. Then he goes on about Siddhartha doing different things. Gradually Siddhartha discovers that no form of self-denial can alter the fact that environments as inputs are profoundly shaped by the individual. This is what that guy doesn't realize. This part of the novel is called Awakening, and he quotes it. Instead, and then the next thing, instead of trying, it strikes Siddhartha that the reason why I do not know anything about myself, the reason why Siddhartha has remained alien and unknown to myself, is due to one thing, fleeing from myself. And then McLuhan says, instead of trying to gain power over and independence of the world, that's like Gnostic, by stifling the various inputs of sensation from the environment, he was trying to withdraw from the inputs, Siddhartha decides to try an even more violent experiment by plunging in depth into the world, and by allowing it to shape him completely. The new strategy of exploration which he sets himself reads very much like the ordinary Western program for self-development. Get a job and make something out of yourself.
Or go to a survivalist camp, or
no, that's a form of
wilderness
denial.
camp.
That's a form of denial. He's talking about, that's partly, maybe, Western program for self-development, if he means that literally, whatever we think self-development is, if it's a course. But if he means just, making something of yourself in the daily world, he might mean that.
Yeah, but back when he wrote that, people...
And that's what he does. He describes him becoming a businessman, hanging out with the courtesans and the women at night, being a normal playboy businessman, a successful guy. And then he encounters the courtesan Kamala and realizes at once that in order to possess her, he must become immensely wealthy. So he becomes wealthy. And he associates himself with a merchant named Kamaswami. Siddhartha's ample Brahmin training, his ascetic training he had as a monk, becomes a great resource for the merchant. So he does well. Having enriched himself and attired himself like a dandy, he approaches and is accepted by Kamala. Siddhartha's complex, Siddhartha says, here with Kamala lay the value and meaning of his present life, not in Kamaswami's business. Siddhartha's complex background gave him easy superiority in the business world. So far, Siddhartha's program of action is entirely consistent with any Western pattern of culture. So he had an external materialist goal in a sense. And then that ends up being meaningless. Life having lost all meaning once more, he has wandered and taken his repose by a tree on the riverbank. He is assailed by a temptation to suicide, but falls asleep and is reborn. He realizes that he has entered upon an entirely new phase of his life. I'm not reading the quotes from the book. He is caught up in the mythic pattern of the perpetual return which unites and cleanses. And he looks at the river and he sees everything, all parts of himself in the river. And then he says, this kind of story is today a popular bestseller among teenagers. They too feel alienated from a fragmented mechanical world, the classified patterns of which have merely presented a slot for each person. The draft card represents as an extreme a form of classified slot, represents an extreme as they can imagine. Our cities and schools seem to them almost as meaningless in presenting unrelated and non-integral patterns of experience. Unlike the Negro, who gets turned on by our new electric environment and feels anger at the literate establishment that had previously degraded him, the WASP world of teenagers is on the whole turned off by electronic culture. At least he is alienated from his own heritage of 2,500 years of literacy. Of course, all American Catholics are WASPs, there being no Catholic culture whatever in the United States. So,
Okay, now he's saying teenagers are turned off by the electric environment. That's not still true. Kids are really into it because they're into computers.
yeah, this is the litter.
Video games.
This is the WASP litter kids,
Yeah.
and that's why they gravitated towards lyric music, rock music that had social meaning, social purpose, or to the alienated music of Zappa, or later on industrial music. They always went for abstract music, a music that had some kind of idea around it, because they had to translate it through the abstract literacy they had, rather than just respond like blacks and get into, Motown, whatever is happening. You know what I mean? Like the blacks weren't into the critical side of. They thought the hippies were. What were the hippies talking about, right? It's just music to them, to the blacks. So that's what he's talking about. Yeah, it's different now. Well, as Marshall said, we've changed. By 1979, he said we've changed many times since the 60s.
Right.
Changed many times.
And earlier when I was talking about survivalist camps and going into the wilderness, I was just jumping ahead to where Siddhartha went to the river and went back to nature.
Yeah, but that's not what the survivalists are doing. That the survivalist program is the Western form of self-denial, of becoming a monk.
Yeah.
You withdraw from the city.
Right.
But no, he's saying the Western program development is to plunge into daily life and make money.
Yeah, no, but I said I was jumping ahead where he went back to the river and
The survivalists don't really
jump back into nature.
Yeah, well, I don't know if the survivalists do that to commune with nature.
No, I meant more the wilderness camps, where people go out and...
Oh, you don't mean the survivalists. Well, you mean the sweat lodges.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's part of the dropout thing, go back to nature.
Mm-hmm. So he's just... Siddhartha was just...
Well, you figure out, is that true? Why rely on me to tell you? Is that true? Is these monks the same as someone going to going into the country? Is that
Sure.
the same?
Sure. The world never changes.
They're not as extreme as that, but they're partly starving, and the world never changes.
The new homeless.
Well, okay, let's go back to this point, though.
Those Brahmin with their little begging bowl and their blanket over them are the new homeless.
Yeah, the homeless are the orientalizing of our world. Yeah. So that's why they say New York is becoming Calcutta. But the point in relation to the quote was this points of input, sensory life.
What do you think, Jared?
Look,
No, I'm listening. I'll go back to something else. But
the Samana.
let him continue.
The Samana. Literate man easily imagines that there is a direct correspondence between the input and the experience. He doesn't know that the input changes the experience. It goes through sensory closure. So the Samana strategy would consist in creating an environment untouched by any technology whatsoever, so that there would be no inputs for the sensorium, and hence no processing of any inputs. No processing of any input such as constitutes experience of sensory closure. So, was there another? No, I guess that's it. Okay, Jared?
Yeah, well, let's go back to silence for a second, because I have a quote that I made up. That it goes, silence is just so that we can hear music. And
Silence is so we can hear music?
yeah,
How could you have music in silence?
well, silence exists. Bring in medium as a massage. See, silence exists so that we can hear music, because it's back to what Marshall's saying. It's a relationship.
Well,
silence can't exist on its own, and it goes to this question: how can you say there is no such thing as silence? How can anything exist? Is it true that something can exist that has a name? How could anyone invent the word silence for something that doesn't exist?
Yeah, you're saying
So they made up a word that said, okay, silence. So then I came along and I says, well, I think silence is sort of like what Marshall said. It's a relationship. You hear music because there's silence.
No, you can hear music even if there was no silence. You hear music wherever. I mean, the Varese made music out of the industrial sounds around him. Right?
Right. Okay.
I'm not sure why. See, here's a good point. The Eskimos say, how can I know stone without the word stone? So how can I know silence without the word silence? Silence, you see, it's a relationship. Silence, it does not exist. It's a ratio of proportions. Silence absolutely does not exist.
It can't.
But
no
silent.
way
But here's the ratio.
In the physical world.
Ratio-wise, it's more quiet here than it is over there. So we say that's less quiet. We call it silent. But in actuality, it's not totally purely silent.
There's no.
It's a relationship. It's less noise compared to this, less volume compared to that environment. You know what I'm saying?
But you mean we couldn't find one place on Earth where it's completely silent?
No, because there is no. The nouns are an illusion. They don't refer to anything. That's why a lot of the.
All nouns, you're saying?
Yeah, there are no nouns. This is what Bucky Fuller used to talk about. I seem to be a verb. It's a relationship, an action. So there's no nouns. But by freezing language into writing, you started to create the illusion of nouns because you could freeze it.
So all nouns are illusions?
No, they're a product of literacy. I mean, when you could, like she's writing all these nouns, but when you translate sound into silence, into writing, then it changes your perception of language. So, literate cultures develop nouns. A lot of oral cultures don't have nouns. Whatever, Hopi cultures, whatever they are, you'd have to go get some linguistic books. They don't have a sense of an object.
Like an Eskimo.
Yeah. The weed am I.
They only have verbs?
Yeah. Yeah, like this is, that's the first poem in there. Geez, I hate that bag there, Jerry. You have to keep moving the bag. I don't know, stupid little fucking bag there.
All we do is move it.
Yeah, get rid of it. Uh-oh.
Hello? Yeah. Hi. All right. Oh, not a whole lot, but I'm in the middle of something. Yeah. Yeah, fine. All right.
What was that?
What? That's just what it was.
Was it an object or a verb?
It was
It's
a
a
noun.
noun.
Jerry, this actually gets us to stop the phone.
Yeah.
Yee-hoo!
That's the shortest.
Jerry, this is the
phone
only
call.
reason. Jerry normally would spend 20 minutes talking to the guy. The tape's on, and he stopped talking.
Fucking A, man.
Who was it, Jerry? Who got insulted?
I don't want to hear. I don't want it to be on the tape.
Well, whisper it. Is it somebody we know?
Yeah.
Who?
Eric. In Canada.
Oh, the idiot.
The idiot.
Yeah.
God, now it's on tape.
No, it's a guy you don't mind putting off. You know what I mean? Right? What do you think he wants?
We don't have to go into
Yeah.
it on tape.
Okay.
After the machine's off, we've got more important things to do here.
Here's in his first thing.
Yeah, get a little humor in this, Bob.
Humor.
No.
This
Okay.
Eskimo poem.
This is a poem.
Yeah, this is a guy. He goes, "Great sea sends me drifting, moves me. Weed in a river am I." Weed. He is the observed. Observer and the observed. He's the weed in the river.
Am I? No.
Weed in a river am I. So
There's nouns and verbs.
this is a translation, Jerry. So the word, and then so McLuhan says the word itself as evocative power. It evokes a suggestion, not a sign. Not a definite sign. It's evocative. Fusion with the natural process. There's the Krishnamurti thing. Fusion with the natural process. Observer is merged with the observed. Weed in a river am I. An artist might have said, used by the words am I. No question here of privacy or private identity, but a free flow of corporate energy. Here the people make their world. Here the people make their world and are not contained in it. The cosmos becomes an extension of their energies. And then he says, Archibald MacLeish said, a poem should not mean but be. Anyways, that kind of thinking is pretty literate.
Leave it in here, Bob.
Why?
Then while you're up, shut that window.
What window? Oh no, I need the cool air.
Half shut it.
No, I want pretty cold. It's not cold. I'm Sharon Stone. You follow me.
Well, cross your legs if you're Sharon Stone.
Bob's first beaver shot. Look at that. Wild beaver. Bob proves he's a woman. So what are we saying here? Silence.
Well, I want to go back to silence because, first of all, so all these words exist and things that they're meaning don't even exist.
You know, look at
It's
this.
just a relation.
The tribal cultures, the professor once told me, they thought, what do opposites have in common?
The oppositeness.
Oppositeness.
Yee-hoo.
So
Who told you this?
Harry Whittier, who's listed in Vatican Communion, that they're opposites. They didn't see things as opposite. It's only when you start to write things down and make separate signs and symbols that you begin to separate, untangle things from the seamless web of speech
Only
society.
write things down? You can't talk?
No,
opposites?
it's seamless when you talk. When you talk,
You can't do it electronic.
To
Only
dance.
written down.
okay. Let's imagine we're the first people. All of a sudden we exist. We're right here.
Yeah.
Okay, I look at you, you look at me, and I might touch you, and you go, ugh, ugh, you know.
I hack, you hack.
Yeah,
It starts
and
to
like,
communicate.
well, yeah,
Hack.
we try to match a bit, but it's a very suggestible matching. We don't know if we're really matching. But later on, when I can sort of draw something, and you look and say, oh yeah, that's it, it kind of defines a little more, right? So speech froze thought. You know, if we first met, we'd grunt, and there'd be a lot of gestural grunting and ESP going on, whatever dance of meaning we hallucinated. But once we started talking and defining words in the sense of saying certain words mean something, we've stopped the flow of ESP. And then when we write, we've frozen speech. So speech froze thought, writing froze speech. And then electricity came in and unleashed speech again. Made it multi-leveled again, you know? Because it was a new language. It freed speech to run amok like in Finnegan's Wake. It was old. But there was a freezing process up before that. Step-by-step freezing. You had thought. And thought was not just inner thought, it was body. Like, if we met and I went like this, you know, you would think from it. You translate it, right? And you would know what I was doing, so you'd have to use a kind of guessing, which would be kind of ESP if you actually were close to what I meant, right? So that's why Joyce believed the beginning began in gesture. Language began in gesture. That's what Joyce believed. Big Meister of the stuttering hand.
It's true.
But it's true. It's a truism, says Jerry Fialka.
Right. So
Jerry Fialka's
why
law.
isn't
Fialka's law.
dancing exactly what you're talking about?
Oh yeah, that's the dance of the dance of thought is ESP.
No, I'm just saying physical dancing now. That still happens.
Yeah. But we call it dance. We put it in a certain context. We don't think of walking down the street as a dance. You know what I mean? Or reading newspapers or her writing as a dance. But that's dancing. Because whatever body communication you're doing is dancing. In the sense it communicates. In the sense that it involves other people who are there to perceive it. It's a relationship. That's what, you don't have counterblast, but he defines it right in there. What do you say? Speech froze thought, and thought, in a way, froze the mental dance of posture, or gesture, or mental ESP.
You mean before, in prehistoric times, cavemen would just have images in their heads, and then they solidified thoughts?
Yeah. They would start to focus on a certain image, and that could be the primitive image, like the woman's vagina. That was something they could all kind of, some new stuff comes out of there. Let's make that our sacred first image. You know what I mean?
And that was you're saying that could be one of their first thoughts.
Thought is kind of a beginning of matching between people. Remember the movie Quest of Fire? Did you see that?
No, but I know a little about it. Go ahead.
But you know how they're just grunting apes. I mean, they're just beginning to get, they've probably been injected by the booties and started to get a memory, get reflex. And when they get reflex, they
reflex?
look.
What do you mean, reflex?
Whatever you want, replay.
Yeah, yeah.
A replay of things, memory.
Joining,
They notice that, hey, if I can do this.
Pattern recognition?
Yeah, early pattern recognition. That's defined on the first pages of Theta Community.
To tell me some injection caused pattern recognition?
Oh yeah, that's the booties injected people. That's how that was the missing link. That's where Terence McKenna misses the point. Yeah.
What's your source?
The only source, the good source, the ones who know us, me.
Bob's going into trance.
Yes. So, no, it's really interesting that, there was
Can
this...
you document it with...
No, not yet.
Oh, you will document it someday?
Well, no, I've got it in print, from the X's. They spelled it out. The Evergreens,
Stop that.
It's been just...
Stop it.
Just checking my microphone. Yeah.
But that's not documentation, that's opinion.
That's what most people think, yeah. That's the problem. That's why I don't tell you guys nothing,
You wouldn't believe how fucked up documentation is in this world.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I understand that.
The Evergreens are a verb.
No.
They're not a noun. That's what Walter, Walter, he says to me in the conversation.
I'm just being a scapegoat here.
Yeah. Jerry covering his ass here. Gail, I'm not crazy, Gail. I'll come to work tomorrow. Okay,
I really hate Matt.
Yeah. Just for the historical record, when they studied this for 100 years, Sam Simonson hated Matt Groening.
Sam Simon.
Oh, Sam Simon. But Walter, you didn't hear what Walter and I were talking about. Walter, I start to throw in the Evergreen stuff, and he goes, well, Bob, after a while he kind of...
Why are you holding that back?
You heard it?
I can know what
That's
he's
what
saying.
he said, why are you sitting on it? I said, for God's sakes, Walter, I played it for you for fucking 2 weeks, and you fall asleep. Did you know I was talking about that when you heard me say that?
Yeah.
You heard me say that to Walter.
Yeah, you have a great way when you dialogue of being able to say both sides of the conversation in your answers.
Yeah. In other words, you can get both sides from me. Eh? So I caught him there. I play. He's accusing me of sitting on it, and I actually played it for him, and he fell asleep every now and then. But then I said, and on top of that, Walter, if you're really interested, I'm so generous, I've given it to the public. It's for fucking sale, from Dobbs Entertainment. You just fucking write them, and they'll send you some good stuff. So, it's ridiculous. And this is the way it is with people like Jerry and Walter and anybody else I've ever met. They don't go into it. They don't look into it. So I'm just, don't push it.
I've listened to the Axis with McLuhan and Joyce.
Well, that's one, Jerry. Okay, there's a lot of other ones. Okay, but anyways, they think if they listen to one, which they didn't understand, that they've done their homework, But what are we talking about? So I'm trying to explain ESP and Jerry. What? They injected them? What the hell? Yeah, they just adjusted this, and this is where in paleontology, this is where the opposable thumb, the importance of the opposable thumb. They know man started to be able to talk with the opposable thumb.
They had needles back then?
The X's did.
When was that about?
The alteration was, I think, about 27,000 BC.
Do you believe that, Carolyn?
Yeah, something like that had to happen. When I'm reading now about the leaky discoveries,
right.
all the anthropology of the first fossil remains and everything, and there were these big leaps in time between the apes and then when humans came, and the only thing that explains, well, actually, I shouldn't say a big leap in time. Actually, it was a very small amount of time between the apes and then when the man's fossils appeared, and there had to be something dramatic that happened to create
because there was a
difference.
big leap in change
In
of
change.
a human. That's what you mean.
Yeah.
That's
But-
what's good
but there
about
must
Brockman's
be-
book. Brockman discusses all these different interpretations of that period. And
Right.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Who has theorized on this that's closest to the X's?
that's what I was telling you. They generally, whatever field it is, paleobiology, evolutionary theory, whatever the name is for the guys who make this statement, but they say that when man developed the opposable thumb, okay, this is the established theory, that the flexibility of the hand with the thumb created language. All right, started to somehow activate the brain.
So
Now-
all these guys agree on that.
Well, yeah, that's a general accepted theory, though they don't know if it's real or not, but they know there's something about the thumb and the flexibility of the hand allowing man to go, hold and let go.
You
Tactile.
learned that. You learned
Tactile.
that in biology. We all learned opposable thumb. That's what made man different.
Yeah, we don't know where they got that idea, but they got.
They all say it.
Yeah, that's a standard law so far. Now, what's interesting, the opposable thumb is the key, and do you remember them saying that triggered off language somehow?
No.
Yeah, well, that was the thing, and then some people say it triggered off language, some theorists, I guess. So, when the Evergreens told me that, I said, where did they do this alteration, this genetic alteration? They said right in there, around the thumb area. They made the injection, and it allowed the thumb to be more flexible, or it just started to create a
Early mirror technique.
Yeah. And it started to alter the bone structure, which activated through the whole body and changed the brain chemistry, and that's when man developed memory, or he started to be able to remember. Just as a mind began. Before that, we just lived like worms in the mud, just groveling around, and people would die, be born, die, and there would be no real recognition of them. They just sort of struggle together, real primitive, and then. And so when they started to reflect, which is my first quote, emphatic communion on the McLuhan side, they developed the opposable thumb. What are you writing?
Words.
Nothing to do with us.
No.
Yeah, opposable thumb was like tactility, right, Carol?
Yeah.
And then the tactility activated the mind, or started to create memory. So.
Yeah, I suppose how would that? How would you theorize that could create memory? They were touching things.
It was the chemistry in the body somehow. They might have added something, but there was a chemistry interaction of that triggered parts of our body chemistry to make something grow in here, and that's what they basically say is when the conscious split and created subconscious. Memory is a subconscious. Started to store things. And so the subconscious was caused by that.
But it wasn't just the anatomical change, it was something biochemical that was created.
They didn't give the exact details what they injected or what, but it's just how they describe it. They altered something in here.
Well, that area, this
potent
first web space is the strongest acupuncture point.
That's a good point,
And
Harry.
it goes, it does, the meridian goes up to the
That's
brain.
a key matrix.
The meridian goes up to the brain area.
Does it?
Yeah.
From here?
Yeah.
And not from the foot? Just this one?
No, there are other ones that, they all travel head to toe. A lot of them travel head to toe, but this one goes up to the head area.
Well, they all go to the head area. What's the point here? You're saying they all go to the head area? Or is there something different about this one?
Three of them go to the head area, and that's one of them.
Where are the other two?
In the hands.
In the hands?
Yeah, from the hand.
Well, no toes go to the head area.
I'd have to check.
So, you mean, don't they all interconnect in the head anyways?
Not all.
Oh, okay. But anyways, this is an important zone, matrix. Well, that's interesting, isn't it? Maybe acupuncture's triggering off some ancient pattern.
Maybe what is?
Acupuncture's triggering
Oh,
off some ancient pattern. That's a new thought for you, eh?
Yeah.
That's why there's lots more to talk about with the evergreens about that. And see, this is what's so amazing. You can't go to a fucking medium and talk about this. If we ask the evergreens, they'll tell you the biology, the neural matter. They'll explain in scientific terms if you ask the question.
So
that's better than anybody else we know.
Bob, I don't doubt it. I'm just asking questions. I'm not.
Yeah, that's the problem. I mean, get in. Don't just jump into the question
What's
mode.
interesting is when
Make some sense out of this.
the
Jerry.
way
Look at Jerry falling asleep.
the way the evergreens seem to want people to relate to them is they'll tell us that much. They'll give us like 10% of it.
A suggestion.
And then we'll talk about it for a while, and then we'll go back and I'll say, well, could that have been an acupuncture point stimulation? And they'll say yes. And then they'll go on to the next level.
Give you a little.
They make you work for it.
Yeah, they're not going to give everything.
You don't go up to them and say, well,
because they don't know everything, or because
they want
you
to learn. They want you to be participant in it, make discoveries.
They want to learn how humans learn. I think.
Yeah.
They want to learn.
Well, they're not the exes; they're astroplane, and maybe they're studying that too, but from the astroplane point of view.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what do we? Yeah, because every
But
now.
I don't believe them all the time.
Every now and then.
Do you believe them all the time, Bob?
No, sometimes they make mistakes in the sense they didn't understand what you're getting at, and they think you mean this, and they're saying that, and then they go, oh, you didn't mean that. Okay, then they correct themselves. They know the answer, but they misinterpret your question because, language is hallucinatory. But every now and then, if I'm pursuing some topic, they'll go, if I make a breakthrough, I'll just say something. They go, exactly. Now you begin to see it, So they like it when you see it. What?
They encourage you.
Yeah, they encourage you, and they seem to know where you should go. And when you get there, they tell you you've seen something, But
so if you ask them, there's no such thing as silence, they would say you're right.
We don't know what they say. They'd have some interesting answer. I'd ask them. I'd say, is McLuhan right there? And then they give. We don't know what they'd say. They do whole philosophical topics. They have tapes on that. I don't know if there is obscure philosophical topics of mine, but there are general philosophical topics covered. But so, anyways, the subconscious. We created the subconscious.
Yeah.
We were just like raw percept. We were like raw percept, just going around, drinking in experience. And then when we divided our brain with this thing they did, we started to store up. And that was the first technology, and then you could say that created a disservice, It created a service and a disservice.
What disservice?
Well, it got us all involved in speech, and speech had a lot of disservices. That's why it's in understanding media. Speech, spoken word, flower of evil. But that's only in retrospect. You work on that one. I'm not going to tell you everything on that one. See, that's why, you want me to be not like the evergreens. You want me to tell you everything. You got to.
No, I don't. Come on, man. Don't always get off.
Well, you're making so little progress. It seems that you need to be told everything. Right? Okay.
Wrong.
Yeah, Jerry. Yeah. So, can you see the gesture?
No, I want to go back to subconscious for a second. You're telling me that there was no subconscious
That's what
before
they
this?
Yeah.
There was just instinct.
Instinct,
movement.
raw percept. Raw drinking in experience and no reflection. It's like the unconscious is like a mirror. No mirror. Spoken is mirror of the mind. The spoken word, the first quote, is mirror of the mind. So the mind was the subconscious, and it was a mirror. And so there was no mirror. That's why
and then this stimulation of the hand up to the brain, it probably just triggered off the electricity of the brain.
To make new chemicals which created a subconscious or something. And the Evergreen said, they did that. They gave the choice to man. Man could have not done anything with it, but man decided to do something with it. So they created a new option. I think that's the way they say it. A new choice factor. They didn't. Man could just somehow avoid it, ignore it, but he didn't. He started to explore and evolve. I think it was 27,000 BC, I think. But I know there's people say man was 100,000 years ago, but you'd have to see the different dates and see which matches up. And I'd have to I know it was 27,000 BC it happened, and Atlantis happened by 10,000 BC. So there was some rapid development there.
Yeah.
But
because they found fossil remains in Africa 150,000
yeah.
BC.
But those may be just the instinctual guys, you know. You have to say what category it is.
Yeah.
So you'd have to have one of those actual scientists in the room.
Yeah.
That's why, you know, the Evergreen should be funded to have a university, to have people come around and take their disciplines and relate it to what the Evergreens say, you know. I mean, that's what I was doing. I was covering all kinds of topics and just sort of sprinkling, and I could only go certain. I got their statements, but I don't know what the expertise is and what the expertise would say about it, you know. So,
What?
So we're talking about gesture. So people were doing gesture and and I don't know how they were interacting, but once they had a subconscious, then they started to reflect on each other, and they did it through language, and then so they have very crude physical perceptual images in the first significant, you know, religions or whatever they called them. The first like big, we're this, you know, whatever sign or symbol they used. But it, you know, it's sort of logic. You see, it's like science is half right. Science is right in thinking what their evolutionary ideas, but they don't know these other factors, the psychic and the UFO thing, you know. And when we find out that, then our knowledge will fill in a lot of gaps. But it's probably logical that the natives were amazed by birth. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. The birth process, you know. I mean, they didn't know how it happened. All of a sudden, a thing swelled up and a person came out, you know. So they would really think this was a magical area, right? So they'd have the goddess worship or the vaginal worship, whatever it was called, right?
The Great Mother worship.
The Great Mother seems to be later. Maybe no. I think they actually, what were they called? The Yoni cults, the Yoni cults or something. And then as they evolved, they'd start to maybe pick out one woman, one vagina versus another vagina, and then fetishize about one particular kind of woman, you know, rather than just the woman part itself, the woman organ. So very interesting, eh, Jerry? So why are we talking about meaning? It's a relationship. Meaning is a relationship. So there are no, but you can see how writing emphasizes objects. I mean, there is no Marshall McLuhan, but if you can write out a word, then you start to think he's that, you know, or it freezes it. If we couldn't freeze words or thoughts, then we'd still be dancing, you know.
We'd still be dancing.
And that's why.
Dancing with our feet and not with our brains.
That's why the early guys, man, when they had their rituals, they'd go into trance, they'd be hallucinating all over the place, you know. Which Terence McKenna likes to romanticize. He says they'd take drugs, they'd be hallucinating, having visions and channeling and having orgies and all this stuff, you know.
Well, that's because they had to keep everything in their mind. They had to keep all their oral culture in their mind, so they always had to keep renewing it and sharing it.
That's true. You mean in their minds, in their memories, and that's why the oral cultures had great memories. Yeah, and that was probably later. Before that, they had to dance it. So ritual, the correct dance to evoke whatever the significance they wanted was important. And they did. They also were so involved. They saw the sun go down. Oh, is it going to come back? And they try to fucking energize it. Think positive thoughts. Dance positive rhythms. And then they couple of it's coming. Everybody all excited and then run on, eat apples and do. And on top of that, they were fucking get dark, man. They wouldn't know where the rattlesnakes were. Can you imagine how fucking vicious it was? Hey, the creepy crawlies coming around, lions. Everything, back, lions were the king of the jungle. They were the cops, Everybody, stand back. Right? So.
Yeah, they were damn healthy, but they lived to be 20.
Yeah, life was short in the early years, in the pre-memory zone, and maybe even after that.
We were talking about that this morning on our walk. What was that, Carolyn, where we were talking about the cavemen and they'd lose a finger and they go, oh, didn't need that anyway. It was in the way.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They go, ooh, that hurt. Ooh.
Right, no, what was it?
They go on
pain. There was something about pain. They didn't even know what pain was. Or...
Yeah, they were so strong and tough.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's it. They were so strong.
And that's what the Evergreens said, that they...
Oh, no, we were talking about how the immune system broke down.
Oh, did allergies just...
Oh, did allergies. That's where it came from.
Yeah, they could live in mud and everything and not... But there was probably, you could say, good air back then, everything was fresh and not polluted. But the, you just remind me of something. What were you just saying?
The allergies.
No, the tough... Oh, yeah, that's what the Evergreen said is where man's psychic ability comes from. On the instinctive level, those first man, he was so psychic because he needed to. He was totally paranoid. He could see, miles away.
His
physical senses were all... Like, if you think he was raw percept, before memory started getting in the way, he probably had such high-tuned senses that you recover on acid, you know what I mean? You could see, you could hear, like the, they say the forest, the animals and those men and the stalking beasts up in Washington State, what they call Bigfoot and those kind of guys. They're like, they could smell, like Beefheart said, the old logging guys could smell stuff 200 miles away,
I don't think 200 miles.
Or 100 miles, and
that's
in They Became What They Beheld. This fucking guy could do that. The guys who lived, the wild men lived up in the mountains. They could smell the smoke from a cabin, 100 miles away, because they were so sensitive. One little shift, they could smell it. But
and now all our senses are dulled because of electricity.
No, each new technology numbed a particular sense. But in the beginning, and you can see in raw percept, there were no boundaries. They probably thought the stars were in their eyes, you know what I mean? It was just, and then you could even think that the sun, they probably thought the sun was right there. They'd have no sense of distance. It was right there. It was this fucking little dot that was making them warm, and they sort of fucking try to feel it, Can you imagine? They wouldn't have a sense of distance. They wouldn't have any of those concepts. They just know it was fucking hot, and then it would get dark. It's like their body, all of a sudden they go blind, it get dark, and a little white moon be right there, be right in front of their face, and they look at it, what I mean? So, and they'd be hallucinating on it. So,
yeah, but they wouldn't get blind because it was dark, because their eyes would adjust like dark.
Yeah, that's
America.
true. Yeah,
your eyes just adjust. You don't need light.
Yeah, but it would be not as light, no matter how much they adjusted. But their senses would be tuned, so they were so perceptual, so instinct, and so as we started, that's the language. It started when we get a subconscious. We started to suppress ourselves. Suppress our faculties. We start to rely on things and create baggage, so sensory baggage.
And that's when we started to calculate and worry?
Yeah. Well, we're always worried, but the calculation...
They worried before they got this?
Oh, yeah. Consciousness was always worried. That's what consciousness is. It's just looking around, it feels hungry, it starts eating something, It's always voraciously trying to quench its sensory.
Before this, the apes worry?
Well, yeah, if you want to call it that.
Animals worry?
Yeah, there's different kinds of worry.
Yeah, you've heard of them. They chatter and
you know what worry is,
call
Carol?
out and,
Yeah, their worry is just hunger. Worry is just hunger.
Predators.
Yeah, they see something, I don't know if they recognize, but ooh, that thing's fucking bit me. They'd run away. It was all instinct, right?
There's these funny little animals I saw in the zoo once, and they stand, with their arms down by their sides, and they're constantly looking up, waiting for attack from the sky. They're so bizarre in the zoo because there's all kinds of noises. They're constantly looking up, waiting to be attacked from the sky.
They look like they're waiting to be attacked. They're always, any noise.
Totally paranoid. It's so cute.
And so worry, you're thinking of worry as internal. They were raw, their sensory life exuded worry.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they were worry incarnate. And so what were we saying? So this psychic stuff was raw instinct. And then language altered their senses. And then gradually they dulled through development, dulled their senses, and the Evergreen said, we're going to now become psychic. We're going to retap our old psychic stuff, but it'll be used in a new way. We won't use it like we used it before. It'll be used in a new way. Be a new ground for it.
When is this? Now that the Evergreens are talking about?
Next couple 100 years.
Oh, the upcoming.
Yeah, it's not going to happen next week, but In other words, that's part of the McLuhan thing. We're going to retrieve Paleolithic man. This is what Terence McKenna talks about. We've got Paleolithic man. He romanticizes the Paleolithic man, but it's partly true that we're retrieving those forms of awareness because we've moved into a new era of raw percept. We're in this electric water that we don't know. We're like first man, you know. We don't know what it is. So we're in a new zone, and
So we're just like those guys back then.
yeah.
But yet we think we're so shit hot.
Yeah, that's what Baccioni said. We are primitives of a new civilization. We're the primitives of it.
Who's Baccioni?
He was an artist around, Picasso's time, way back there, turn of the century. That's a quote that McLuhan always.
Boccaccio?
Baccioni?
Oh, Boccaccio.
Or Boccaccio, I don't know if it's Boccaccioni or Boccaccio. Baccioni. But, he was a little sculptor guy.
So what will be the new thing that changes? The new medium will be virtual reality?
Yeah,
Or interactive media, or what?
that's just one phase. We've had You know what we've had? It was another. Marshall defined television as virtual reality. You know how he did it? When you watched the screen, you would make an image out of it.
Oh, right.
And so you were an active. You weren't passive when you watched TV. Your senses were active. They were hallucinating new content. So that's like virtual reality. Your senses were making something. And now virtual reality is just like high defining it. It's actually turning into a consumer commodity. You take one package, you have an option of choices, but it's high definition. You can see it. There's particular imagery, and you get more precise. So that would actually define. That would create a more precise individuality of perception again, like writing did.
But can you define the new medium that will change? Like, spoken word, printed matter, electronic environment? And
Well,
what's the next?
Well, it's digitalized media. Virtual reality is part of that. Digitalized media will be used everywhere, Chip technology, call it that.
You know how it's all this 2-bit wit, yes-no technology? I wonder if it's going to get to the point where they do put this fuzzy logic into the computers, what that would do.
They'll have to use that. They're starting to think it. Well, it'll do something, Yeah, I mean, we're going to go beyond electricity. The Evergreens told us that.
If computers get fuzzier, are we going to have to get more, is it going to make us more yes-no people because we have to balance out the fuzziness of computers?
No, but you're talking about the content of computers, the mechanics of it. They want to make artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
They know that to approximate human intelligence, it's not a defined. They're realizing that reality is not, that objects are unobservable. You can't have yes, no. They know there's this fuzzy interrelationship going on, and so they're trying to make machines work on a fuzzy zone, work in the interval, which is more what humans are. They're a process. You know what I mean? They're relationships.
But
Have you read the fuzzy logic section? There's in the book,
no.
Brockman. Yeah, there's a section. It all spells it out. How'd you know about it?
I've been hearing about it.
Yeah, they talk about it. That's what's good about that book. They just step by step show the questions and the development. So
what I'm saying is, will there be a trade-off? The more computers go into fuzzy logic, will humans try to avoid that? I don't know.
yeah, well, look at it this way. They make some new technology. They make computers better. So they will be applied somewhere. If whatever they're applied to, it's the relationships and effects on other things that is the meaning of that new application. The application is just making words move faster. Let's say they can move more graphics and design to you. But that's just refining maybe left hemisphere particulars. We're already in the most futuristic situation where we've disappeared in the discarnate state. All this is just refining, like rebuilding the left hemisphere. Where you can see graphics, you can have access to it. But that's just data. That's just bits of information. What's the point of it? It's
Nothing really matters.
no, that's not true. Everything matters. It's just understanding what it matters to you. But what we just So they're just fine tuning the ability. I mean, virtual reality, as Leary said up there at the house, is just like a telephone. Interactive media was just like the telephone. you're interactive. You can type in, and someone can pick your data information up. You're just sending different kinds of bits of information, but you can transfer it by this language to the telephone. So virtual reality on the interactive technology is just an updating of the telephone.
He said that. Eh?
Yeah, that's where she was trying to pin him on the bad things of virtual reality. He said, well, telephones didn't do bad things to us. They had some bad services, but they had good things. And it's not going to be this, he wavered on it. Sometimes he'd say, this is a great new reality, and then he'd try to say, well, it's just like the old realities we've already had. And some people, I don't know if he did, he might say it, but I know another interview I read, some other guy named Best, he was saying, we've had virtual reality since television. So it's words. Now, Jerry, you're going out. Not good, Jerry. So shall we phone Wink, Christine Wink?
You got her home number?
Yeah, I can get it. I'll just call the information. 322-1492, something like that.
Why don't you
put it
write
on the
it
phone.
down?
Because I can get it.
It costs you a quarter every time.
Okay, well, you'll pay that, okay?
So grab the phone and do it. You've talked about it.
Well, no, I didn't. I wanted to hear if you wanted to talk about this more. Did we...
That's good. You can call Christine.
Yeah, I was just thinking, what were we talking about there? See, like you're saying, what's the new technologies?
That's what I was asking. What you still didn't answer.
Yeah, it's like Barry Nevitz said. The computer does.
don't know.
The computer does very well what never need to be done anyways.
Yeah, so there isn't going to be a fourth.
A fourth what?
Major media that changes everything.
No, there'll be ripples, changes, but no, but here's that's what I was going to say. The Evergreens.
You're not answering.
No, here's the thing. The Evergreens say the last electric technology will be when you can direct a little man. It's like remote control of a plane or something. You take a little man and you'll be able to send him into a tunnel, into a tube, and he'll go in there. And it could be designed like you, a little image of yourself, and he'll go inside something and find something and fix it. And
Fantastic Voyage, like they send
something down there. So
they send it into the human body.
Yeah, there's a movie. Yeah, so we'll be able to do that. Now that's the last phase of electric technology. They didn't tell me what was the next technology.
That's what I'm asking you.
But here is the final technology. This is really interesting. Get this for the record. I asked them about Armageddon and the end of the world, and they said the final Armageddon will be in about 500 years, when man will realize what McLuhan meant, that the medium is the message. They will get to a technology that, if they invent it, they will realize if they will invent it or make it, when it is actualized, it will erase everything we ever knew.
Whoa.
And we will sit there going,
sounds like the anti-Finnegan's Wake.
Antimatter.
It's the total flip.
No, Finnegan's Wake is what it is.
Finnegan's Wake is about everything that ever happened.
And then it's all blurred.
So that means if you understand Finnegan's Wake,
yeah,
it's the end of the world for you.
Yeah, that's what they realized. What I brought. I said, well, that sounds like McLuhan, which is Finnegan's Wake, and they go, yes, they will realize that. They will see if we create this new environment, the effects will be devastating. They will finally have to look at the effects before they make it.
The matter in the world will disappear?
Well, I don't know. They say that's the crisis. That'll be the Armageddon. That we will, if we invent this new amazing technology, then it says we will not know, we will forget everything we knew. We'll be so mutated, we'll be back like into the apes again. We'll be fucking apes. We'll be going around in raw percept again. You know what I mean? Because we won't have any unconscious.
A bubblegum wrapper and eight apes will come around. Wow, it's God.
No, they won't even say that. They'll just roll and walk over it, push it aside, get out of the way. You know what I mean? So it's funny. We've come full circle in this. Full circle in this conversation.
They'll take the chip back out.
Who will? The X's?
Yeah.
Or the booties. Was the booties and the X's different?
No, they're the same thing.
They are?
Yeah, the booties are the X's. My X's are the booties because they're the real X's. They're the ones that are going to do it.
But the Evergreens agree with you?
No, they're the ones who told me it was the booties.
And they told you that they are the booties?
No, they're not the booties. They're spirits.
I just asked you that and you said yes.
Oh, I thought you meant are the X's the booties. The X's are booties. The Evergreens aren't X's. That was just a way of covering up that they were the Evergreens. So I used the staying word X's. Right? I pretended they were the booties. And for all intents and purposes, they were fucking extraterrestrial.
Okay, the Evergreens and the booties are one and the same.
No, the evergreens are dead spirits. Okay? The astral plane, it's people who are dead. And they're talking through a medium, and they're telling us about our dimension. And in our dimension, they see the Booty civilization will make the contact with us. Okay? The Booties are in our physical universe.
Right now.
As a matter of fact, the Evergreen said that when the Booties people die, they don't go to the same astral plane as us. They're in another astral plane, wherever that fucking is, another heaven. And when we start to interact with them, then we will know about them, and we will start to interact with them on the astral plane. So it's like there are parts of astral planes that are not discovered yet, if they are connected. You know what I mean? Isn't that interesting? Never heard that thought before. So, so what are we talking about? So the Exes. So I feature interviews with the Evergreens, dead people, and they're describing when we're going to have extraterrestrial contact, and they say it's the Booties. So I talk about the Booties. Now, as Bob Dobbs, I merged the Evergreens with the Booties and called them the Exes, right? Because it was boring to say, yeah, we're talking to dead people. Let's say we're talking to it was part of the metaphor. The Exes are here, and I'm talking to them. And the Evergreens could say such amazing stuff, they'd sound like extraterrestrial intelligence, right? And they were extraterrestrial, literally, because they're not part of this world. They're in another world, right? Normally we think of extraterrestrial as not of this planet, but in our world, but in another planet, right? So, what were we talking about? What we're saying? But what we did, well, we came full circle there. We started off with the fucking thing, and then it ended up with us in the end of the Armageddon, going back to being primitives again. Now, well, they will take this out of us, and what will that do, Carolyn? They won't do that, because that would.
No, but that's what this technology implies. When you
it will make us lose our memory.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, I say we'll forget everything we know. That means we'll lose our memories, and we won't be able to regain them. Isn't that amazing?
Everybody all at once?
Yeah, the whole world or something.
Consciously?
Consciousness. Well, this is 500 years from now. We're going to be quite integrated in the next 500 years. You know what I mean?
No, what do you mean by that, integrated?
Well, we'll probably all have a kind of ESP, and we'll all be zoomed, just like Star Trek. We'll be all fucking everybody will know everything all the time, and we'll function in that medium, and then we'll know the effects of this technology, you know? That's like Rai, Carolyn. Mm-hmm. It's like Dave's story. Rai was the thing that went off on its own trip, and got out of the unity. And it will be unified at the point where in 500 years we'll see, we do that, we'll create a Rai catastrophe. But Dave says that, they shouldn't have worried about Rai. It was the thing they got worried about Rai and judged it and chased it.
Well, are all humans off on the wrong path? Is that what that Rai story is?
Well, it created matter. Rai created matter, and humans judged it. And then Rai became the judge too. So it was an interpretation. It's like every technology is a further devastation of us, but it has a service too. It has a service and a disservice. So we went on a new path, and it had services and disservices.
But it's the whole world then.
What is the whole world?
The story about Rai returns to essence.
Yeah, it's the story of matter, reality, whatever you want to call consciousness. It's an archetypal story. You guys all falling asleep.
No, we.
Oh, I thought you were. So, okay, let's phone Christine and see let's see what's on sightings. Because that's good for UFOs.
Bob, you gotta shut that now. It's too cold for me.
Oh, okay. No, it's okay.
Thank you.
What channel was the sightings, you remember?
There's a TV guide around here.
Business friends and family firing the entire travel staff, replacing them with a firm back home in Arkansas. Allegations of cronyism. Some are calling it Travelgate.
Look at the guys with their.
Look at that Travelgate. He hired his Arkansas buddies, kicked out the wife.
On this Friday, May 21st, 1990.
They have no idea.
Who does it? There it is. It's good. You get to see what people are videotaping.
We're
You see our clock.
videotaping Bob.
What? What'd you say, Carol?
We're videotaping Bob.
So we got some secret knowledge there for history on there.
That's some heavy shit you talk, man. I like that. I want to meet one of them there booties.
You one of them dear booties? Did you inject me with something 27,000 years ago? I'm pissed off what you did to me.
Tonight, UFO experts who conduct serious research have a whole vocabulary to describe their formative science. One term you may not be familiar with is flap. A flap occurs when UFOs appear in waves over a specific area for a specific period of time. The appearance of flaps has sinister overtones for ufologists who believe these recurring sightings have a secret and perhaps deadly agenda.
You know what flaps is,
All around
Jerry?
the globe, there are certain places that seem to act as
Flaps is
natural
the enemy, and for the first time in years I wrote his name down on the fucking pad. See the synchronicity with Flaps? It was mentioned in the Vatican Union.
There are hotspots in Russia,
No.
Europe, and in South America, the heavily populated city of Sao Paulo has had hundreds of sightings by thousands of people. These flaps have prompted researchers to try to find a common pattern or motive.
Anybody who studies this soon becomes almost desperate to understand a pattern or to impose some purpose on the phenomenon.
In the United States, sightings are widespread and occur almost nightly. America's #1 hotspot is Gulf Breeze, Florida. Ralph Fuller's sighting in 1988 was among thousands of others, but Ralph was the first to capture a UFO on tape.
Look at this, Jerry.
I don't know what that is out
Look.
there over the Gulf, but we just
That's real ones, man.
had a
Look, Jerry.
real bright light.
This is what the Evergreen said were real.
Saucer.
They seem to
Yeah, the Gulf Breeze.
spawn
Really?
Yeah.
one another. The
They were the real ones.
3 and 4 and
Look at them.
ultimately
You got that
there-
on tape?
over a matter of maybe a couple of minutes time, there were 10
Look at this,
of
Jerry.
these,
Fuck, man.
lights out over the Gulf, and they seem to be in some
Jerry, you should see this.
semblance of a formation, but still in all, there was no movement whatsoever, no noise, no sound, nothing of that sort.
Hey, Carol.
You see
The booties.
nothing.
Those are the booties. We just got footage of the booties, Jerry.
The nearest
And the Evergreens
land would
confirmed
be
it.
the Yucatan Peninsula, and there were no boats or anything of that.
You like them? They were those
like
little
the
shapes
area
on that
either.
magazine. You like them, Carol?
Yeah.
How's that for
These are
synchronicity?
Sky watchers, amateur UFO enthusiasts in the Gulf Breeze area who go out almost every night of the week with cameras and binoculars in search of UFOs.
What makes a good sky watching area, for one, is a good field of view. That is, being able to have a unobstructed view of the skyline, and ideally you'd like to be away from city lights, but that's not always possible.
There's MUFON. That's who I
we
talked
go out
to.
in the evening and take our chances, and you may have a relaxing evening out under the
26%.
stars, and then you may be blessed with a sighting. We just never know.
Look, Carol.
Seen the amber-colored lights, 8 lights in a perfect circle gliding and performing maneuvers in the sky. We've
14.
seen rows of lights, suggesting lights perhaps around
That's one of
the
them.
periphery of a craft.
It's like a badminton bird.
Birdie.
We got our own copy.
There are UFO hotspots all over the country.
We see it?
Gulf Breeze, certainly. But also here in New York State, near a little town called Pine Bush. And the hotspots here, near Pine Bush, according to one scientist, have a very special meaning. Bruce Cornett is a geologist who lives near Pine Bush, New York. After numerous significant sightings of UFOs near his home, he
Well-
began studying the area with an electromagnetometer.
What I found is that these magnetic anomalies are in specific patterns. And all of the UFO activity, the landings, the sightings where they are taking off and landing, when we've been able to identify specific areas, are associated with these magnetic anomalies.
Are you suggesting that nature created homing devices deep in the ground?
No, I think that it's a reverse. If we are dealing with an alien culture and they are doing something underground, they're using the natural magnetic anomalies to disguise their own magnetic signals.
Are you saying there are, or could be, aliens in the Earth?
I'm not saying it's certain. It is definitely possible, based on what I've seen.
Do you realize how that sounds?
I don't like the idea just simply because it is so outrageous. And then I would have to also add some of
Look,
the
yeah.
photographic data that I have that shows, at least in one particular case, a UFO going up at a 7-degree dive right down into the ground, what appears to be.
Ellen Crystal has been investigating the Pine Bush Flap since the early 1980s. In her book, Silent Invasion, she documents hundreds of UFO encounters in the area. Working independently, her findings seem to coincide with those of Bruce Cornett.
These ships kept coming back to the same fields night after night after night, the same places in the woods. Also, we had experiences where we clearly heard somebody drilling in the woods at night, and this is private property. It seems that there's something being constructed underground, such as an artificial installation of some type.
One of the most well-documented sightings in history occurred in Pine Bush on August 6, 1992.
We think in excess of 1,000 people may have seen 2, 3 ships or 4 ships where I took video, and all the police departments across the whole lower New York State area was simply inundated with just hundreds and hundreds of calls.
We looked over the top of the trees, and there was this object there out of nowhere. This great big object. It was about 300 foot wide, the size of a football field hanging over your head, and about 300 foot off the ground.
We looked at our clocks, and we had 3 battery-running clocks, 2 in the kitchen and 1 in the living room. And for some strange reason, all 3 clocks were stopped at the same time.
Everett said there'd be
Just
a lot of
about
sightings in
everyone in
92.
Pine Bush has seen a UFO. In his barbershop, Butch Hunt hears a lot of stories from eyewitnesses about strange alien encounters.
About 60% of the people around here, I think, have seen something. And some talk about it and some don't. They're just afraid to talk about it.
He's got all around it.
Ridicule and intimidation. The one that we saw was over Red Mills Bridge. And there were 6 of us in the car. But it just so nice. It just glided right over the trees. And we just got out and
What was
stood
that?
there.
That was not real footage.
Just gawked at it. And nobody said a word. But the whole episode was probably 30 seconds. But it was huge. It was bigger than the bridge.
UFOs are cited by all kinds of people, including the most credible professionals that you can find. In addition, when we have multiple witnesses who all tell the same story, then we can say, well, that's probably a pretty good report. If we have enough detail in a given report that we can rule out all of the normal explanations, it's not the planet Venus, it's not the Aurora Borealis or a meteor, it's not an aircraft that we can name, then we are talking something very incredible.
No one disputes that there have been unidentified flying objects sighted around the world.
Your hair's perfect. You never slick. Shut up.
I gotta, yeah.
No, you don't. Swallow it.
What a mother.
Did it just go on now?
Yeah.
That all that other stuff wasn't on. Right, Jerry?
Right.
Okay.
So, Bob, what'd you talk to me about this morning?
Well, it's like this, Jerry. Jerry farted. You farted, didn't you? So, we would say,
What, there was a topic this morning? I missed
yeah,
it, right?
why you can't tax the super rich. That's the topic. Since money is flowing around the planet electronically through economic information exchanges, all right?
Electronic fund transfer.
Yeah, all that. I mean, they don't send cash around. They send economic pulses, electronic signals representing money, electronic money. Since they can move anywhere as fast, and no national bureaucracy can catch them, then you got to do their bidding. So in effect, the economic antichrist is here, and there's no way to control them. There's no way for a national bureaucracy to deal with them.
Any nation.
Any nation, even the United States. The United States is as vulnerable as anywhere because they can make money, move it so fast, and invest in this place. They can prop up the old hardware environment that money measures, in a sense, anywhere they want. So, what the people got to realize, the average guy in the street who's not functioning in the economic global casino, he or she has to realize that it's a hell of a job to work on that level of management and be responsible for millions of dollars and balance sheets and all the stuff that these guys and their chart accounts got to worry about. They make huge profits, but if they get in trouble, then they get in trouble. So they have to have lunches, business lunches, and all this stuff, and eat polluted food. So the normal lifestyle of a person living in a big chief executive lifestyle or whatever level of higher than $100,000 a year, that lifestyle will kill anybody. So the average Joe has to realize that let all those suckers, as McLuhan said, there are managers galore for the global theaters. Let these dudes who want to be managers, give them their due, give them good low tax rates on their high level income and on the businesses, so that they will come and invest in your company, in your country, and you'll get more job opportunities. Now, in this world of software utopia, you got a job, you do that, and then you got all this other stuff you can do in your off hours and enjoy the software utopia you're in, whatever you want to do, and you don't have any of the responsibilities of managing the global economy and dealing with the big corporations. So if you harass the rich guys, this global electric money, then they'll just go to other places. And right now the global depression is not global. It's here and there. It's discontinuous. There are countries, little countries around the world, who are booming because they're offering incredible low interest rates to companies and to
low tax rates.
What did I say? Yeah, low tax rates. And so so if the people realize that they're discarnate, that they have more free time and more fun just doing a Joe job and not having to do the headaches of management, then they can say, let the suckers, let the pinks take over the management, give them their breaks so that they'll come and give you jobs, because you do require a hardware job to get the hardware income of money, which is the poor man's credit card. To get money, you need hardware or services or hardware employment opportunities, and those hardware opportunities are mobile. You got to think of industries in the hardware level as like movie sets, and the money, the flight capital that invests and props up these movie sets can be moved all over the world to any little country. And because the hardware sets are being done more by robotics and more imploded technology, they're tinier, and you don't need a country that's rich in resources to set up this hardware Hollywood, this hardware model set. You just put it wherever you want. Like right now, they're putting it into China's free trade zones, and China is booming. They got incredible growth there because they're giving good deals to the floating hardware module. So the hardware module is inside the electric software global theater. That's what we're inside of. That's what we're largely dealing with in all levels of our lives. So the hardware beast, the banking, the money, all that Gutenberg galaxy and industrial technology floats around the planet, plopping itself wherever it can, prop up its airsats, its fake hardware economy, and whatever gives a good deal, it'll plop down there. So since it's floating around, no nationally limited bureaucracy can catch them, because they can just move it around. And how they move around just by saying, we're going to take this money and we're going to invest it in here and create jobs, and they'll build the Hollywood set, cities and skyscrapers and railroads and all the different things that that a hardware guy builds in the factory zone. So it's an art form, moving around. And since you can't catch it, you don't want to be envious of the high lifestyle those guys, that jet city kind of guy lives in. You have to realize that that it's ridiculous, the headaches that these guys have to deal with. So let them run around doing their hardware Hollywood prop sets, and you just realize, hey, I got it way better than them, because I'm globally discarnate, floating around the electric theater, having access to all kinds of information in different forms. And if I had a headache job like that guy, then I'd be flying around the jet or cars or limousines, but you're just doing that. Whereas if you have software information, you can take in all kinds of things and have the time to enjoy it, whatever your software addiction is. So the thing is, you get the real wealth is time to do things. The executives, they don't have much time in the terms of the responsibility they have, but the average peasant had lots of time if he's got basic income. So you let the hardware model, which is the visual space antichrist, go wherever he wants, have his way, give him high interest rates, because all that does for them is give them monies that they can buy more jets. And when you're traveling around the jet, you're just in one body. You could watch television on the jet, but you're limited in that little claustrophobic zone, and so you're moving around, limited to body activities. The average electric peasant is more powerful, because he can float anywhere in the world discarnately with the electric media he's using, or even not even using electric media, just going around having time to do things. So the electric peasant is king. So the Antichrist, he thinks he's king, or if he doesn't, he's a panic king, trying to set up his Hollywood hardware set anywhere he can. So he's in a panicky situation. He may think he's superior to the info peasant, but the real utopia is not to be in the hardware model. So let the Antichrist and those who are attracted to it float around the planet, give them their due, and don't tax them, because they can take out their money anytime and make it worse for you. So if you don't tax them, they'll come and prop up businesses, and in propping up the businesses, it gives you and your neighbors jobs, and at least some kind of economic fallout. So the skillful subgenius today would not tax the rich. So that's why the United States and Bill Clinton are all wrong. They're still battling with the hardware model. They're trying to change the hardware model, Hollywood, the hardware fake set, and they want to change it and make it socialistic, whatever they think they want to do, and they'll never be able to catch them. All they do is get software flack from the media, which is bigger than any hardware model, the news media and all forms of media entertainment. So the socialist model, or whatever Clinton thinks he's doing, he's battling a hardware phantom from the 60s, which is not able to be captured. So he will eventually realize this. Germany will make the first realization. They started fucking up that policy in the early 90s and making and taxing the rich, and so they got into a bit of a recession, and that affected the United States, and they brought in the same policies, and they got a recession. But Germany will be the first to realize that you got to give these the floating hardware antichrist his due. They'll bring him in, and so Germany will have the first recovery. Then that'll spark a recovery in America, and then Canada will follow after that. Meanwhile, there's all kinds of recoveries happening in South America and different countries around the world where they realize this. So later in the 90s, as everybody gets hip to this point, they'll all be competing for talent and capital, and be offering incredible, bargains. You come here, we won't even tax you. We won't do nothing. Just come here. And so the competition will get pretty heated, but it'll be based on this principle of recognition that the hardware model can be bought, sold, or stolen, but the electro peasant can not be bought, sold, or stolen, as long as he realizes you let the hardware model steal all they want, because it's a limited universe that they live in, and have a lot of disservices in their lifestyles, and let them have it. Let them have the cancer while we reap the benefits.
But
okay, Jerry, is that the point?
I have some questions.
Yeah, but that's the basic point, right? Is that well laid out? Yeah, you understand it. I expand on it a bit more than this morning.
Well, something came to me when you were saying that. Okay, you let them get away without paying taxes, and then the next thing is they pay less wages to the people. There's no pollution controls. It's like everything that unions and environmentalists have been trying to implement to keep things safer for people, all that'll be thrown out, it sounds like.
No, if you let the companies make more profits, at a certain point they know they can't. This is where the electric technology is a piece that passes all technology. The electric technology puts limits on the hardware Ghost Phantom, because they can't keep ripping everything off. Since they don't need money, they just want mobility. They need money on the visual bias medium level, but they just want to move around and build and look like they're building up great statistics in their performance pieces or performance profiles. So they know that they can't totally rip off everybody, because then you're destroying the ground they work in. It's just like in warfare. You don't want to kill people because you need someone in a country that you're going to take over to carry on the industrial factory work, so you don't want to kill off the peasants. You got to let them live. So you try to take them over without killing them.
So it's like you're using the warfare analogy for industrial warfare.
Yeah, industrial hardware warfare. And the other thing is, since they're limited, they can only, this is the electric environment goes around all these old hardware media, so they're limited. They can only go so far. And the other thing is, they make a lot of profits, then they will have largesse to give people some benefits. The thing is that all the different businesses are so intertwined that if one guy tries to create a problem, some other business will probably come up with a counter service. And with the speed of information, people can find out things and create antidotes pretty fast. So I think we can have more faith than people have been conditioned to realize that people are in control now. And they just have to not be in control in the old form of dictating what your boss does. Let the boss have all the free reign he wants, because the boss is in such a shithole of a role that you try to make him as happy as possible, since if he doesn't do it, you're going to have to do it. You're going to have to get on the jets and fly around and have these stupid meetings with a dozen gray attorneys, and what a drag. So electric autonomy is what the electric peasant has, and he just has to realize how to let it flow around him. So I think the less you hassle these guys, since they're probably type A people that are aggressive, if they get what they want, then they might start to feel that they have nothing to fight against. So they'll create a fight by offering pollution controls. They'll try to always have some kind of aggressive, ego-satisfying thing. It's the nature of that kind of person who's attracted to the hardware phantom.
So if government doesn't be its battering ram and try to fight with it, then the energy of that will go into other areas.
Yeah, the businesses will become their own governments. So government just has to do the services it was originally set up to do, which is basic welfare of the people, or protect them, right? And police services or whatever. Now, I'm just talking about what is a policy for the hardware phantom guys, because they have the same problems as we all have inside the electric erosion, which leads to inflation and all these other problems, which is another reason why you don't want to have that kind of job, because it's a real headache to deal with all these problems that are still coming. There's still a lot of disservices of the electric environment. But I'm saying that you're not doing a proper response to the new problems that are come from the electric effect on all other disservice levels if you're distracting yourself with the economy. That's why Bush was a better guy. He didn't bother with any local stuff. He just allowed the economy to flow on that level, even though he made a mistake later and brought in the taxes and that.
Well, but he allowed the S&Ls to be ripped off, though. That's a major.
Yeah, we have to let everybody get ripped off. You see, people will say, "Well, geez, they'll take all my money." They're not going to get rid of unemployment or basic welfare. The thing is that there's lots of other things you can do, improvise on your own, if you can think them up, that provide little services. But I would say that people should stop desiring hardware services, because the software services accomplish everything already. So now one of the problems of that is that the people who in the less industrialized parts of the world who haven't had these hardware services, they're going to be the ones who will be the global managers, because they want to relive that hardware model since they never had it originally. And so they're the ones who will need these services and maybe provide the consumer response to that kind of stuff. But the real problem is that, yeah, we're all going to go into hardship as the electric environment absorbs all economic measurements, and that's why the hardware model is moving around, moving wherever it can, because it's got so many pressures on it. It just goes where the area of least resistance. So we just have to realize that the problem is not the Antichrist anymore. It's the electric environment we've created. So let's concentrate on that, and then maybe we could bring in media ecology, or deal with these problems that that are affecting people's own personal lives on the hardware level of pollution and stuff like that. See, if we cleared up all the old misnomer problems, misnomered irritants, and looked at what's really going on, then maybe we'd make some new progress. So.
You jumped, just one last thing.
No. Okay, why don't we switch the tape and then you can ask?
Yeah.
But you jumped over the SNL thing.
Right. So let's just switch the tape and then you come back and say it, because it's going to end any second now.
Yeah.
And then we don't have to end midway. Okay. Stop.